a marathon is actually 42 kilometers long. So he has run all the world's major marathons, in total about 30 marathons. Very few people in the world are able to be strong enough to raise their concerns about human rights.
But with time, I've realized things that are important to us, we always find time for them. The immediate response is the muscles contract, energy is being used, heart starts pumping more blood, your breathing increases because lungs participate in it. And over time, all these 3-4 mechanisms get stronger and stronger. When you talk about a marathon, which is running 42 kilometers, 26 miles over a period of 3 to 5 hours, bodies are not meant for that long sustained activity. It's like a marathon. It's not like a sprint, it's a marathon. So same thing, if you have to get into physical activity, you need to be consistent and be patient and give yourself time to be able to reap the benefits, right? But I say health is also something there needs to be a health. We need to invest in our health as well, because if we are looking for retirement to be able to reap the benefit of all the hard work we do all our lives, we need to invest into our health. And there should be something called 401k health, where when we retire as a healthy person and be able to enjoy the retirement life. When you do physical activity, your appetite improves, you get hungry, you tend to eat more, and actually sometimes you overdo it. Because of the physical activities, there is a release of endorphins. They overall make you feel better, release mental health improves, the decrease in the stress levels, decrease in the anxiety levels. I'm a big proponent of intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting needs to become a lifestyle, right? So keto diet is great, does great wonders. You get immediate results from the keto diet. But again, I felt like patients or people struggle to maintain that diet.
Simple things in your life, simple changes in your life can help you maintain the homeostasis that God has given us, and we can preserve and save the physiology that He wants us to live with. Hello and welcome everyone to this very special episode of our Homeostasis Podcast. Our guest today is a transplant nephrologist, Dr. Salman Khan, and he takes care of very complicated kidney transplant patients. But he is not just a transplant nephrologist, he's also a marathon runner. And he has run all the world's major marathons, including the 6 big ones. Hopefully, I can remember the names. He has run Tokyo, Berlin, London, New York, Chicago, and Boston marathons. And if some of you don't know, I also learned it recently. I thought marathon was maybe like 10 or 12 or 15 kilometers. A marathon is actually 42 kilometers long. So he has run all the world's major marathons, in total about 30 marathons. And there's also a couple of other things that I'm not sure about how you do it, but some Ironman competition. He has participated in that, and we'll get some more details on how you do that. And he has participated in triathlons. So he's here today to share his experience as a nephrologist, as a specialist in fluids and electrolytes and kidney diseases and high blood pressure, to tell us how to safely get off your couch and start exercising and maybe get to the point where he's at, where he's making every one of us proud. But important for me that he's here today is the fact that he is from the same high school as I was in, Cadet College Hassan Abdal in Pakistan. And he's also from the same medical school that I graduated from, which is the King Edward Medical University. So thank you very much, Dr. Salman Khan, for taking time out today. And he is working today. He just came back from the hospital. He's still getting calls from his patients. But I was visiting Dallas and we only had a few hours. So he has kindly taken time out to talk to us today. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Aslan, for inviting me. Usually I've had pleasure to talk about running and my marathon experience, ultra marathon experience, as well as triathlons. But the moment you contacted me, I had to accept this opportunity to talk because it's going to be a nephrologist to nephrologist. And the kidney and homeostasis, balance between how an athlete can take care of themselves, hydration, electrolytes, they're all interlinked. So I had to come to your podcast and talk about this because this is the whole core of ultra training and marathons is related to kidney hemostasis. And that is basically what your podcast is about.
Yes, definitely. And also, I would like to mention here that he is a very good human being at heart. He always raises his voice for the people who are oppressed, people whose human rights are being ignored. And that's something special that you don't find very commonly these days. People are usually scared to voice their differences. They feel like we don't want to offend anyone, keep everyone happy. So, very few people in the world are able to be strong enough to raise their concerns about human rights. So, thank you for doing that. So let's start today by talking about the very basic physiology of exercise, and then we will go on to the special things about marathons and endurance exercises and things like that. So my very first question to you on a personal note is, how did you go from being a full-time nephrologist to a marathon runner? How did you decide to do that?
Some things are meant to happen. I never thought about it. We both went to the same high school, and as part of being in cadet college, physical activity was essential part of our daily lives. But life changes. We went to med school. Med school is very rigorous in terms of academically, so you don't get time to focus on yourself. It's more challenging academically. So going through the med school and then residency, fellowship, you kind of lose track of physical activity. I remember myself playing cricket or tennis every now and then because I loved playing both of these sports, but never actually had done anything consistently. And somehow I got to a point where I started feeling I am not physically up to task on doing the activities that I used to be doing being young, to the point I ended up going to a primary care doctor for the first time in my life to discuss the issues that I was struggling with. And I told the doctor that as a physician, I go to the clinic, see patients, and come back. But I feel like I have been hit by a train. I don't have any energy when I come back home. I sit on a couch and I just don't have any energy to get up and go to the bedroom. I felt just very deconditioned. So I went through a thorough checkup and evaluation. We did all the testing that possibly could do, and everything came out to be normal. And my PCP was like, Salman, you are in perfect health. You are in good shape. But I thought still something is missing. Something is not right. The labs don't show what I actually feel, and I don't feel the energy level that I used to have. So I went back to the whiteboard and asked myself, what is wrong? Everything seems to be fine as per the doctor. I'm a doctor myself, but I don't feel I have the same energy. And two things dawned upon me looking back. One, we forget to realize that time catches up. We are all getting old. And as we get old, our mind is still not caught up with what the physical changes are going through our body. So it is more time now for us to pay attention to our body as we get older, which we get busy and we ignore. Mind is telling us that mind doesn't tell us we are getting old, but the body is telling us, we just don't realize. So I realized that I need to pick up an activity that I can do consistently, not just every now and then, like playing tennis or going and playing some cricket, but something that I can do 4 or 5 days a week. And the only sport that came to my mind that I can do consistently was picking up running and walking. So that was one thing. The other thing that I realized, that living in South Asia, culturally we don't focus on our sleep hygiene. We tend to stay up late. Our parties, all of them end up late in the day, and we are up past midnight. And I was still continuing those habits that I had picked up back home. But over here, the life starts very early. So we sleep late past midnight, but then we are up at 6 a.m., ready to go to work. And again, as we age, the body needs more time to rest and recover. So I realized that I need to pay attention to my sleep hygiene. I did do those two things, and I found a remarkable change in myself.
Wow. Now that you mentioned the change in life habits, I realize I have to tuck my tummy in when I'm sitting next to you. Mashallah, you are so fit, and we all need to start doing what you are doing. So that's very important advice. But how are you balancing your busy nephrology career? Because you are still getting calls from the hospital all the time. Sometimes you're on call at night. How are you balancing your busy nephrology career with a habit that probably takes time? Like if you're running miles 4, 5, 6 days a week, you need some time and you need some uninterrupted time. How do you balance your career, which is pretty intense, with something as intense as running marathon?
That's a very good question. But with time, I've realized things that are important to us, we always find time for them. Okay. So it is the realization what is important for you. And the moment you realize that you need to pay attention to your body is where then you would be able to find time. We do have a lot of time at our hand, even though we consider ourselves busy. And if we realize the importance of physical activity and the fuel that it provides us, we would always be able to find time. But and obviously, once you go to work as a physician, you don't have a control over your day. You never know when you'll be getting done with your clinic or when you'll done with the hospital, because patients don't get sick on a schedule. When they need a doctor, you have to be present for them. So for as a doctor, the best control over our time is early in the morning. And again, it brings up to the same issue that we have culturally. We sleep very late. So waking up in the morning is always a big challenge, and you have to get used to it. But I try to do most of my activities early in the day, because if I don't end up doing that, then towards the end of the day I would miss doing that. But like I said, I found it this is a fuel for my body, so I make sure I find time. Initially I used to do with other group of friends, but now with the busy schedule, I just squeeze it at any time of the day. I avoid doing it with a group because that is always challenging. You have to find more time, and then you have to go with a particular schedule. My goal is to just fit it any part of my day, and just 30 minutes to an hour. If I get this, I get my things done.
And with the Dallas weather, with mostly being hot and humid, are you doing it at regular times of the day, or you're trying to wait for the sun to go down and do
Right.
your running? Because
That's another good question. Again, the point is to get the things done. Whatever gets the thing done, I do that. A lot of runners, they talk about hating a treadmill. But for runners, they love to run outdoor, experience the outdoor environment, and get the good feel being outdoors. But for me, I'm at a point where I recommend everybody to get past that mindset and just know that you have to get your things done. So if I end up have to do my activity at part of the day when it is very hot and humid, I just jump on the treadmill and do the thing on the treadmill.
That's great. Because I know when I saw on your Facebook, when you were visiting Chicago, you took a little run, and you were visiting Pakistan and you took a little run around the city. So you love outdoors, but if it's not possible, then
yeah, that's my thing, to explore. Anytime I'm visiting a city, that's my thing, to explore the city through running, and that's the best way to do it actually. And since the kids and everybody else in the family, they wake up late, I get my things done first thing in the morning, so I can spend the rest of the day with them.
Perfect. So let's discuss the science of exercise. So start from the basics. So let's talk about what happens to the human body when you start exercising. So someone who is not used to exercising that much, once they start exercising, what are some of the changes they will start noticing in their physiology in the body?
So the body goes through a lot of changes when you do physical activity. The immediate response is the muscles contract, energy is being used, heart starts pumping more blood, your breathing increases because lungs participate in it. And over time, all these 3, 4 mechanisms get stronger and stronger. In the short term, when you start running, in the first few minutes, there's anaerobic activity where energy is being utilized without the oxygen use. Muscles are contracting, and then the changes in the body, in the heart starts pumping faster. You start breathing harder. But as the time passes with the sustained activity, you move over from the anaerobic to the aerobic activity with the heart rate goes down, your breathing settles down, and then the hormones get released, endorphins and adrenaline, which all make you feel better. Your pain sensation goes down, and you get a sensation of runner's high. So that is what the body goes through. And then in the long term, with the endurance activities, your heart gets stronger with more stroke volume and cardiac output, your breathing, and then utilization of oxygen improves, where you are utilizing the oxygen more efficiently. So all these changes in the body happen gradually over time. I hear from a lot of the runners when they start running in the beginning, they say my heart rate goes very high or my breathing is very hard. And again, I had to explain it to them. All these changes are very normal to have, but then you have to gradually improve on that. You can't expect to be completely deconditioned and starting from zero and expect to be running like a seasoned runner. You have to go all through their changes. I started running 7-8 years ago, and I went through the same transition. If I look back, my running, my cadence, my heart rate, everything was off the chart, and slowly and gradually over the years they have improved.
Perfect. And what does cadence means?
So cadence is the steps that you take while running.
Just the rhythm of
the steps.
the
Yes,
steps. Okay.
Absolutely.
I have a Peloton at home.
Right.
And I've used it maybe once in the last couple of years, but they mention cadence all the time. And I'm always wondering, what does cadence really mean? So what's happening in the kidney when you start exercising? What is your kidney doing to keep the balance in the body? Considering our homeostasis podcast, how is the kidney maintaining the homeostasis once you start working out?
That's very interesting. And now that is where our conversation, I think the interesting part comes in. So interestingly, the kidneys take a back seat whenever you are in activity mode, because the major blood flow is going to be going through your heart, your lungs to pick up the oxygen, to the muscle where the blood will be flowing to deliver the energy and then oxygen, and the skin, obviously blood flows to cool off the body, right? So since all the blood flow is going through here, the kidneys take a back seat, and the flow of blood to the kidney can drop up to 20 to 30%. So if that happens, this drop in the blood flow to the kidneys also helps, because the kidneys also go taking a back seat, go into the conservation mode as well, because what the kidneys in turn would do is to try to preserve the water and then absorb the sodium and the electrolytes that you've been losing in the mode of sweating. So there's increased ADH secretion that would help kidneys to conserve water. There's increased aldosterone secretion that would help to conserve the sodium. And then there's going to be activation of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system to control the blood pressure and the blood flow. So the kidneys, though they take a back seat, this is done in a conservation mode to help you be able to perform better. Then there is some detrimental effect of it that we would discuss, and we can talk about that as well.
And we are sweating a lot, and some people think sweating is really good, but when you are sweating a lot, what are you actually losing in the sweat? And how can that affect your body's physiology?
Yes, so there's casually we use the word sweat it out, right? A lot of people actually go to sauna or do activity to sweat it out. So that's a casual term used, but physiologically that means you're losing water and electrolytes. And obviously, if you are losing water and electrolytes, sustained loss of water would lead to dehydration, and sustained loss of electrolytes can cause electrolyte abnormality in the body. And that is where the kidney, again, as I mentioned earlier, play a big role, because when you are physically active, the core temperature of the body rises. And as it does, the blood flows to the skin, and the mode of cooling down the body is the sweat. And that is how the body regulates the temperature, by sweating to cool down the body. But that leads to losing a lot of fluid and electrolytes. And again, the kidney plays the big role there to conserve the fluid loss and electrolytes. Again, it all depends how you're hydrating yourself and depleting your electrolytes.
And that was my next question. What role does hydration play in kidney health and general health during exercise?
As you lose electrolytes and water through sweating, kidneys are trying to conserve it. But the kidneys would do it up to a point, because the blood flow to the kidney has decreased by almost 20 to 30% in the setting of physical activity. So it is very important for you to hydrate yourself, because if you don't hydrate yourself and don't replenish the electrolytes, the body is going to start experiencing the dehydrated state, and your activity is going to suffer, your body is going to suffer, and the overall performance is going to suffer. So that is where the importance of hydrating yourself and replenishing those electrolytes come into play.
And I know you briefly touched on it, but during long runs or marathons, how do kidneys manage fluids, electrolytes, and blood pressure? Then we can go on to some of the harming effects or detrimental effects of strenuous exercise.
So short duration of activity, your body can manage without the lack of hydration and electrolytes. But when you talk about a marathon, which is running 42 kilometers, 26 miles over a period of 3 to 5 hours, bodies are not meant for that long sustained activity. So you are going to deplete your fluids, you're going to deplete your electrolytes, and you deplete your glycogen stores. So all these need to be repleted in an efficient manner to be able to perform during, and that is what you train for. Going into training, you get yourself used to depleting your electrolytes and adequately hydrating yourself, and then taking enough carbs to be able to perform those activities. And that is the key to training for any endurance activity, whether it is a marathon, ultra marathon, or triathlon.
All right, perfect. And what's the risk of muscle breakdown? Because a lot of time we see patients, even the ones who are not doing heavy exercise, end up in the hospital with something we call rhabdomyolysis or muscle breakdown. So what's the risk of rhabdomyolysis during exercise, especially strenuous exercise, and how do you avoid that?
So a couple of things that one have to be aware of. Any kind of physical activity causes micro tears in the muscles. So there's always muscle breakdown when we do physical activity. The muscle breakdown release creatine kinase, it releases protein into the circulation, and when the muscle breakdown, it releases potassium into the blood as well. So in terms of short activity, this is all physiologic, and those proteins and enzymes are released into the blood, but the kidneys are able to handle that. But whenever we do sustained long activity, the muscle breakdown is more, and it actually gets worse if the temperature is hot, body is not able to maintain the core temperature, and body, you get suffer with heat exhaustion, and the activity is more strenuous than you are trained for and used to, and you don't take care of your hydration electrolyte, you put yourself at increased risk of rhabdomyolysis, because as we mentioned earlier and talked about, there's decreased blood flow to the kidney already. So kidney are in a state of stress. They are already being stressed. They are trying to overwork by conserving fluids and electrolytes. And now if they are put at more stress, all the muscle breakdown of this can jeopardize the kidney function. Kidneys can go in and shut down. And that is where the rhabdomyolysis come into place and causes acute kidney injury.
And how common is that in people who are doing strenuous exercise?
So luckily, it is not as common as we see it in the hospital. We just do it, but obviously it's not common. But those that we see in the hospital are those, we generally see it with outdoor workers, less common with strenuous physical activity. The workers and people that we generally see are those that are doing strenuous activity in outdoors in extreme of temperatures. In terms of athletes as well, majority of these patients either are those that are not used to doing strenuous activity, and they would go ahead and they would be challenged by their colleagues, or sometimes they would be forced to do such a strenuous physical activity that their body are not used to, or they are doing it in high temperatures. And since the body is not used to it, the athletes that suffer are not used to hydrating themselves or taking care of themselves are the ones that usually suffer from it.
And what are the signs that these runners and people who are doing heavy exercise, what are the signs they should watch out for that their kidney may be suffering some kind of injury or something bad is going on in the
Absolutely.
body?
So I have run a couple of 100 milers where you are out doing a 100-mile race and non-stop over the course of 24 to 30 hours. So something like that, as a nephrologist, the most common indicator for me, the color of my urine, right? That's a strong indicator. So if the urine starts getting darker or cola colored, you're in trouble. In addition to that, when your body you can start feeling very exhausted, confusion sets in, you feel nauseous. These are the common signs that you have to. But one thing I would always recommend to athletes to wash out for the color of the urine. Okay, and that's how I actually know on the day I'm doing a long activity is how well I'm hydrating myself and repleting my electrolyte is the color of the urine. The moment it starts getting darker, I know I'm behind, and I improve my electrolyte replacement and hydration to make sure the urine color stays as clear as possible.
Yeah. And sometimes I joke with medical students. We have medical students rounding with us, and sometimes we tell them, nephrology is pretty fancy and there's a lot of things to learn. You should try to be a nephrologist. They say, oh, I don't like dealing with the urine. I usually tell them our patients make the least amount of urine, right? Like most of our patients are hardly making any urine. So if you want to avoid the urine, probably nephrology is a specialty. But on a serious note, when you stop making urine or the urine output drops, that's also a sign that probably kidney is not doing the job properly.
Absolutely, right? Yes.
And talking about electrolyte shifts, so how is sodium and potassium behaving during exercise?
So sodium and potassium are very common, and all athletes know about that very well. But basically, you lose a lot of sodium with sweating. So almost 80% of the sodium is lost through sweating in a strenuous activity. Luckily, we have our kidneys. Again, the whole hemostasis system, kidneys are very essential in overall health maintenance, is that the kidneys conserve the sodium. So when you lose sodium, it causes the sweat gland starts secreting aldosterone, right? And aldosterone is a hormone that acts on the kidney and helps to conserve the sodium for us. Same thing, potassium. Initially, as I mentioned earlier, muscles break down, potassium gets released into the blood. So initially the potassium level goes up, but then the aldosterone comes into play over here, and then the aldosterone causes the kidneys to excrete the potassium. So the potassium goes down, and in long sustained activity, actually, you need to replace your potassium. That is why you see athletes eating bananas or taking salt tablets which have potassium in them high, or taking gels which have high potassium content as well. You hear about athletes taking coconut water. So athletes know to replace their not only their sodium but also the potassium, because the lack of potassium can cause decrease in the muscle activity.
So if you start running, start doing exercise, and if you're not a physician, you probably learn a lot about physiology and medicine while you are training to be an endurance athlete.
Yes.
So we did mention the dangers of dehydration, but overhydration can be equally risky. What are some of the risks of overhydration, and how do you balance dehydration versus overhydration?
So as the name says, overhydration means taking too much excessive fluid. The important point about it is normally if you take excessive fluid, if I'm a normal person who does not do much of physical activity, if I drink a lot of water, the kidneys, if they're functioning normally, they tend to dump all the excess fluid and water, right? But when you're in the middle of a strenuous activity, as we mentioned again earlier, that the kidneys take a back seat, they go into the conservation mode. So the kidneys, there's a hormone called ADH secreted, which is acting on the kidney to conserve water. So the kidney's ability to dump water is during a strenuous activity low. So if you go ahead and replace overhydrate yourself, what is it going to do? Increase the blood volume and it's drop your sodium. We call it hyponatremia, which itself has detrimental effect on the body. So the key point in hydration yourself is to drink to your thirst. Know how much fluid and electrolyte. If you are doing an activity in a colder temperature where you're not sweating, you don't need to hydrate yourself in the same way if you are doing an activity in a warmer outdoor setting. So you need to make sure you drink to your thirst, and not only drink just plain water, but drink electrolyte water with sodium and potassium in it, because just drinking water by itself would cause a decrease in your sodium level and cause hyponatremia.
Yeah, and usually the tendency is someone passes out after an exercise, you try to make them drink more water because you think they may be dehydrated. And I don't know if you have seen that Turkish drama Torul. It's had like 400 episodes
Yeah.
about 400 years ago, 500 years
Uh-huh.
ago. And anyone who's sick, anyone who's bleeding, anyone who's dying, they would just feed them more water.
Yeah.
And what happened to me was once my wife passed out at home because she was
Uh,
having an asthma attack and I'd seen
mm,
so much of Torul. I started giving her more water and she's like, give me the
right.
inhaler.
Right.
I don't need more water. So, talking about specifically your kidney patients, are there any folks with high blood pressure or chronic kidney disease or some comorbidities who should be avoiding strenuous exercise?
Yes, one should be careful with that. So if my patient who have chronic kidney disease, like if they have mild chronic kidney disease, stage 1 or 2, physical activity is actually good for them, right? It improves the cardiovascular health, improve the blood pressure, improve insulin resistance. So for them, physical activity is good. Physical activity in moderate level, I recommend them to do that. But obviously, I have to educate them in terms of their hydration, because they could be on medication that I need to look into carefully and recommend them how to go about with their physical activity. Now, it becomes a little more challenging when patients have more advanced chronic kidney disease, like stage 3 to 5, because those are the patients that are taking medications that can affect their potassium or sodium. These are the patients that have kidney disease to a point where it could put more stress on their kidney with a physical activity. So in those cases, you have to tailor their physical activity to a point which does not cause acute kidney injury and cause progressive deterioration of their kidney disease, more rapid deterioration of the kidney disease. Same thing with the patient with high blood pressure, mild hypertension, which is well controlled. Again, physical activity is very good for those patients because, again, it improves the cardiovascular health, it improves the blood pressure. But patient who has uncontrolled hypertension, then strenuous activity is prohibited in them, because those patients could be on diuretics, which causes electrolyte loss in the setting of physical activity. So patient with advanced kidney disease or patient with uncontrolled hypertension are the one in which I actually prohibit them from doing strenuous activity. Mild physical activity, aerobic activity is fine, but anything strenuous, I usually prohibit them from doing it, because we know any kind of strenuous activity puts stress on the kidney, and they already have stressed kidneys. Their blood pressure is not very well controlled, and they're taking medication that have already caused a lot of challenges to controlling their electrolyte balance.
And they usually say, oh, before you do this, talk to your physician. A lot of physicians are also not sure of what to recommend in this situation. So, patients with advanced kidney disease, what's the maximum level of exercise that you recommend to them? How much walking, running, or any kind of like weight training, etc.?
I recommend them light activity. I encourage them to do light activity. Again, these are the patients who have stable kidney function and controlled blood pressure. I would not recommend them to go about and doing any kind of physical activity if kidney function is not stable and it is worsening, or if the blood pressure is not very well controlled. But light aerobic activity for short periods of time is recommended, and that is what I tell them to do it. And then again, I discuss specifically to them how they need to hydrate themselves. Since I have access to their labs, I discuss with them based on the medication that they are taking, what changes they have to make to their electrolyte replacement as well. Obviously, if somebody whose potassium runs on the higher side, which is very common in patients with kidney disease, I wouldn't recommend them to take a lot of potassium replacement as compared to a person with a normal functioning kidney whose kidneys can tolerate higher potassium intake.
Perfect. And have you seen any cases where intense exercise unmasked an undiagnosed kidney problem?
I do have some friends that have gone through rhabdomyolysis, a very good friend of mine, excellent athlete. And so, again, it points out to the fact that it's not like it can happen to only athletes that are new or beginning this activity. I have known people, actually, those that suffer from the consequences of strenuous activity are those that are very seasoned. One of the friends I know, very seasoned athlete, a 100 miler, frequently doing 100 miles. But again, sometimes you can't predict the weather conditions. So I've seen those suffering from rhabdomyolysis. I have athletes that unfortunately have developed advanced kidney disease and known to have gone on to dialysis requiring kidney transplant. I've seen those patients in my transplant setting, but quite a bit of them, unfortunately, I know, are also in the habit of not very well educated and using medications to boost the performance, or taking medication to alleviate the pain that is involved, which they don't know causes a serious harm to the kidney. As a kidney doctor, I would rarely take pain medications, knowing how serious effects the kidney those medication can have on the kidney.
Yeah. You keep mentioning this 100 miles, and I start feeling short of breath just hearing about 100 miles. It's a very, even my Tesla runs out of battery like over 100 miles. So
Right.
this is just amazing to me how you guys do it.
Right.
So how does someone sitting on the couch, just someone like myself who is not used to exercising, go from sitting on the couch to maybe start running 5Ks and eventually a marathon in a safe and medically efficient manner?
So
Give us some like
this is
practical
this
to
is a very
follow.
this is a very good question and very close to my heart. First of all, I want everybody to know when they get into any kind of physical activity why they are doing it, right? That's very important, right? One should know what is in there for them and why they are doing it. But again, the key is to start gradually and slowly, and take it slowly and progressively. It's like a marathon. It's not like a sprint, it's a marathon. So same thing, if you have to get into physical activity, you need to be consistent and be patient and give yourself time to be able to reap the benefits, right? So you start slow, don't increase your physical activity, especially if we talk about running more than 10% of what you do the previous week. Then make sure you are keeping yourself hydrated very well, replenish your electrolytes, take care of your nutrition. And then when you say couch to a marathon, again, you don't jump from couch to a marathon. You give yourself smaller goals. So when I started running, I did not know even about a 5K. And then if you would have asked me what's the distance of a marathon, I would fail to tell you that. So for me, when I started running, my goal was not to run a marathon. My goal was to become physically conditioned, because I had noticed changes in my body. So I started with walk and added it to a run. But I immediately noticed the changes that my body is going through, and then the improvement in my mental health with the running as well, leading to decrease in my stress and anxiety level. Yeah, as a physician, we have a very, very stressful lifestyle. We are with our patients, we are observing their suffering, we are busy taking care of them. So there's a lot of stress that physicians and other occupation as well, they don't realize that a lot of things do put a lot of stress on us. Running was something that immediately helped me to relieve that stress, and that is the first thing when I started running, noticed in myself, and that's how I got hooked into it. But my running and walking became a 5K, and then 5K became a 10K. 10K led to a half marathon, and then eventually I did a marathon. And that is what I recommend to everybody. Start slow, but be consistent. Being consistent is the game. If you don't do any kind of physical activity, make a promise to yourself that you'll do 30 minutes of activity for 3 to 4 days a week. Start with that, gradually, as much as you can, progressively improve, and avoid putting stress on your body immediately. They say it all the time, listen to your body, which is very important. If you're hurting unusual, if there's some unusual pain, you need to back off. If you experience some unusual symptoms, you need to let somebody know about it. In best scenario, talk to a doctor if you have symptoms.
I see. But someone like me listens to my body. I just sit on the couch and watch Netflix eating biryani all the time. So probably at some point you need to stop listening to your body and make it suffer a little bit to get some benefit.
And then I call it here, all of us are looking into our retirement, right? So everybody is investing into their retirement. We all have 401k plans, investing money every month towards our 401k plan so that we can reap the benefit at the time of retirement. But I say health is also something there needs to be a health we need to invest in our health as well, because if we are looking for retirement to be able to reap the benefit of all the hard work we do all our lives, we need to invest into our health. And there should be something called 401k health, where when we retire as a healthy person and be able to enjoy the retirement life. So if the investments needs to start way early in life, just like we invest financially into for our retirement, we need to invest in our health from a beginning. You're younger than me, but there would be a time you would notice, you'll notice a change in your body, and maybe that would be time for you to start it.
No, that's a very good point. There's also a couple of things I want to clarify. These days, and a lot of people, my wife included, keep asking me, why don't I just use these weight loss medications? We had 2 kids, gained some weight. So why don't I just use weight? Like I keep telling her, you need to exercise and stuff, but why don't I just use the weight loss medications and lose weight like that instead of doing exercise and going through all the trouble? So is there any other benefit of exercise besides the weight loss that commonly people use it for?
So exercise has a lot of benefits. And for most people, they think of exercise as just a means of weight loss. For me, the weight loss is actually not a primary reason I advocate physical activity. Because if you look at it, actually physical activity may end up making you gain weight, right? Why would it do that? Because when you do physical activity, your appetite improves, you get hungry, you tend to eat more, and actually sometimes you overdo it because of the physical activity. Subconsciously you're thinking that you have put an effort, now the reward is there. Just like you mentioned biryani or donut, that you do a physical activity, you feel like you now deserve to reward yourself with a high carbohydrate diet, thinking that you may have lost a lot of calories. But you'll be surprised, physical activity actually does not lead to as much of a caloric count as you can pick up by eating non-unhealthy kind of a diet. In addition to that, there's muscle gain as well, that also leads to weight gain. But physical activity alone can improve, like I said, cardiovascular health, better control of blood pressure. It improves insulin resistance, better diabetes control. It avoids a lot of metabolic syndrome. And then on top of it, as we mentioned, there's release of adrenaline, there is a release of endorphins. They overall make you feel better, release mental health improves, the decrease in the stress levels, decrease in the anxiety levels. So you have to look at a physical activity encompassing a lot of benefits. And once you realize that I think it would be easier to take up a physical activity if you realize how many angles does it work to improve your health.
Definitely. And if someone above the age of 40 wants to start exercising for the first time and eventually get into endurance exercises, what type of physical tests or physical examinations do you recommend they do before they jump into the deep end?
Absolutely. So if somebody is starting from scratch, never had, and they're 40 and above, you have to be a little careful, because that is the age you can have silent heart disease or silent kidney disease. And before starting it, and if you have never had a proper health check, I would recommend to have a proper health check. You, before starting that, see your primary care doctor, have a complete history taking, baseline EKG. If you have risk factors in the family or you yourself have risk factors, then you do additional testing. It's always good to have baseline kidney function test, CBC, and then check a basic metabolic panel where you check a lipid profile, hemoglobin A1C. So it is always good to, before, and this is specifically talking about if you're 40 and above, and if you have never had a regular physical exam, before starting any kind of strenuous physical activity, it's always good to have these tests done, and so that you have a peace of mind.
And what's your personal hydration and fluid and electrolyte routine for the long run? Like, what do you use? Of course, using thirst as a guide, but what type of products are you using?
Anytime I'm doing any long activity, the first thought in my mind is to make sure how am I going to be fueling myself, how I would be hydrating myself, and what kind of electrolytes I would be taking during the activity, right? So if I'm doing it as part of training, I'm making sure wherever I'm running, there's adequate hydration stations. If they are not, then I'm carrying adequate quantity of fluid with me, or stopping around in my run where there is hydration available to take fuels. Usually we take in the form of gel, so I carry them. And then normally I drink Gatorade, right? Any electrolyte fluid. And that is what I do during a race as well. In a race, when I'm running, there are 8 stations that are providing you both with water or an electrolyte fluid. And I always pick up an electrolyte fluid. I just never drink plain water. But some runners do like to drink water, but they have salt tablets with them, or they're carrying salt with them that they take frequently.
Is there a formula to it? Like how many grams of salt you need for how many miles?
So not for the salt, but for the carbs, protein, there are some rules to it. Like in terms of fueling, if your activity is beyond 60 minutes, then you take 30 to 60 gram every 30 minutes to an hour. You give yourself 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates. Now, a lot of these gels, they would have sodium content and potassium in it, so that would be adequate to replace your sodium or potassium. But then some of them don't have it, and athletes do pay good attention to the ingredients of those fueling, so then they would carry their salt tablets. So usually 1 or 2 salt tabs every hour is usually adequate. And again, if you're drinking the electrolyte fluid, that should also help you with replenishing your salt.
Good. And are you following any special diet to help boost your stamina before these exercises, or anything special that you take to help expedite your recovery, or any diets that you avoid?
So yes, for recovery, obviously we all know protein is the best recovery because there's muscle breakdown. So proteins have amino acids, and so usually you end up taking 1.4 to 1.7 gram per kilogram per day of protein. And usually within 30 minutes of a physical activity, you take 20 to 30 grams of protein. So this helps to repair the muscle, helps in the recovery. In terms of what to do before an activity, you want to take some carbs, because again, glucose is what is being metabolized and is a source of energy. So you want to take around 5 to 7 gram per kilogram per day for lighter activity, and for more strenuous activity you take almost 10 gram per kilogram per day. And then before race, you do carb loading, you do a carbohydrate rich diet all day. And then 3 to 4 hours before you start your activity, you again do a carbohydrate rich diet at least 3 to 4 hours before the activity. So these are the things that you follow as you go along.
And considering our Desi audience in mind, talk about the foods that they should be eating and they should be avoiding besides these calculations.
Right.
Any specific foods that we commonly eat in our diet? We eat roti, we eat chawal, we eat chicken, we eat curries, things like that. So anything that you specifically want to recommend and you want people to avoid?
So our diets are rich in protein, which is very good. So we eat a lot of legumes. We eat rich in white meat, red meat. So in terms of protein, we don't have an issue. Now, when it comes to taking carbs, again, calories in is calories out. If you are particularly careful about your weight, then you have to cut back on the carbs, right? Now, I mentioned earlier, we have to take carbs for physical activity, right? But you need to know what is your goal when you are doing a physical activity. If you are mostly focused about your weight, then you have to cut back on the carb, because again, your goal is to be a negative caloric diet to be able to lose weight. So in that cases, I recommended cutting back on bread and rice because they are rich in carbs, right? But a day before the race, I recommend taking rice because you want to do the carb loading. So again, it has to be modified what you want to achieve with your diet. Our diets are very high caloric diets, very high in carbs, right? And that certainly does not help in losing weight. If your goal is to lose weight, then you certainly want to cut back on the carbs, roti and chawal, right? You have to like no roti, no chawal diet.
Oh, that's like a disaster for us. But do you have any comments? Because a lot of people might be thinking, listening to us at this time, and I don't know, we have discussed this before, but Any comments on keto diets and intermittent fasting?
So I'm a big proponent of intermittent fasting, and I intermittent fasting needs to become a lifestyle, right? So keto diet is great, does great wonders. You get immediate results from the keto diet, but again, I felt like patients or people struggle to maintain that diet. You can maintain it for a month or two, but it can't become your lifestyle. Most of the people that I know get great results, but after a couple of months, they are back on their old diet. But when it comes to intermittent fasting, now it word seems a little harsh. Intermittent fasting, fast means, because as Muslims, the fast we are used to, it involves not taking any calories and not drinking any fluids, so nothing goes through the mouth, right? So when you hear about fast, you're thinking in those terms, but actually it's not as strenuous it is, and it is more of a lifestyle. So we need to be in the habit of doing intermittent fasting every day. That is how our lifestyle should be. And how can you be achieving that? We should be eating dinner early. Okay, more in most cases I recommend eating dinner before 7 p.m. And then after that, avoiding any sugar craving, because that is where most of the things happen. You eat dinner 7, but then around before bedtime you're having sugar craving, people are eating sweet desserts. So that is where you need to avoid, and you need to put yourself through accountability that you're not going to do it. So 7 p.m. you eat, and until the next day morning 8 9 you do a fast, which is going to be 12 to 14 hours of fast. And this is the kind of lifestyle, if you develop that, you'll be able to lose weight, and it would be sustained and long term rather than a short period of time.
Perfect. And do you overnight when you're fasting, you can drink water or
Absolutely. You can
non-sugary
take you can all
drinks,
the
right?
you can take fluids. And if you can get into the habit of sleeping a little hungry rather than full, you would notice difference.
And do you believe in one of the meals being the best meal of the day, or you should have a big breakfast and a small lunch, or skip it? Do you believe in that, or you think just every meal can be the same amount, same number of calories?
So interestingly, I have a lot of friends and patients that when I talk to them about weight loss goals and how to achieve them, they would swear by the fact that they only eat once a day. And I actually don't recommend that, because I have talking to all these, subconsciously your mind works in a way that if you eat once a day, that one meal of the day becomes as if it's the last meal of your life, right?
Yeah.
Because you're thinking that since you haven't eaten all day, you can go ahead and do whatever with that meal. And actually, that does not work well for your weight or your health, right? So I actually recommend 3 meals a day, right? Because you need to have a good breakfast in the morning to be able to perform well during the day, a light lunch. Okay, but dinner needs to be the least important meal of the day. Why? Because after dinner, you're not doing any kind of hard physical activity. You don't need all those calories there to just go into bed. So if one can become in the habit of having a light dinner, that is the best way to go. And then surely you can have a very good breakfast and lunch during the day.
So the last question, I know we are out of time, but one last question about the supplements that people use for exercise. How about the creatine supplements and the branched chain amino acids, the BCAAs? Have you found any utilization in exercising?
Yeah, so your creatine we hear all the time. Yeah, one has to be just careful, because creatine obviously improves the performance. And since creatinine is a marker of a kidney function, artificial use of creatinine can cause an artificial rise in the creatinine in the blood test. But as long as it is taken in the recommended doses, not taken excessively, that is fine. But you have to again make sure your kidney function is normal, you don't have any underlying kidney disease, because if you have underlying kidney disease and you're taking these supplements, then it could jeopardize your health and kidney function.
All right, Professor. Thank you very much, Salman Bhai, for joining us today. I know you are very busy. Also, you guys might have seen him on national TV channels. So it's very kind of him to come all the way to the hotel where I'm staying at right now and give this interview to our humble podcast. We hardly touched 100 subscribers. We are hoping to do better over time, but still, it's very kind of you to take the time out, talk to me today. And I'm sure whoever listens to this podcast, if it's 100, 200, 1,000 people, everyone is going to get some benefit out of this. And it is definitely a motivation seeing you do what you are doing. We all want to hopefully do that at some point. But even the small changes that you mentioned, the diet or the exercise or lifestyle, eating habits, sleeping habits, even small changes are hopefully going to give us big returns. So thank you very much for joining us. Any parting words for our listeners?
No, thank you so much for having giving me this opportunity to come and talk. I've followed your podcast, and it's always very educative to hear from your audience and from your hosts. I followed those, and I've always felt as a physician, you hit the right topics and get the right content out of your host. So I hope what we talked about reaches out to your audience and it helps them to understand something about exercise physiology. And I hope you can all take up physical activity. It doesn't have to be a marathon. It can start by just a daily walk or jog, and then you can change your goals according to how you feel. But I hope not only your audience but yourself, I hear from you in the coming months, telling me that you have picked up something and then you're doing it regularly.
Well,
That would be my success of sitting with you and spending time with you.
I promise I'll try my best, and this is going to be my end of year resolution, because I know New Year's resolution never works for me. So probably the end of year resolution, and that's the goal of our podcast. We want to bring you the experts in their field who give you the evidence-based advice, which is unadulterated, not sponsored by any kind of pharmaceutical company or any kind of device company, and cut through the noise that you hear on the internet all the time, like people recommending all kinds of supplements and trying to sell different kind of detoxification juices and things like that. Simple things in your life, simple changes in your life can help you maintain the homeostasis that God has given us, and we can preserve and save the physiology that He wants us to live with. So, thank you everyone for listening. Stay tuned for more. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel so you can get notifications for the future episodes. Thank you very much once again. Allah Hafiz for now. Hopefully, we'll see you in the next podcast.